Welcome everyone to Labs Weekly number 6 with myself, Adam Shaw and Dan Amadio. Today we're going to talk about something that's not necessarily technical. We wanted to dig into this whole work from home notion, talk about some best practices. We have some fairly good experience of folks working from home. Myself, I've worked from home since about 2006. Actually this month it'll be 14 years for me, which is crazy to think about, but I've learned some tips and tricks over the years to help those that may not be used to it or have kind of been forced into this whole work from home thing with no real idea of when we're going to get out of it. We see a lot of things in the news about, some of Japan and China and some of the things they're doing in the physical offices and basically completely changing layouts, and they can only handle like half or a third of the staff that was there before, right? So there may be this whole, well, we can handle this work from home. More people might be working from home for quite a while now. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer. I went from working in an office every day. The drive each way was an hour plus, depending on traffic and, weather and whatever else up in the Twin Cities, directly into a consulting role. I moved to working for IBM in consulting. It was work from home and travel. That one was mostly travel. So, I didn't learn a whole lot about, working from home. I mean, I was pretty much gone Monday to Thursday every week. So there wasn't a whole lot of that. But what I did start to learn is it's really, really important to have a dedicated space. I don't care where that space is. I don't care if it's your couch. You can see our nice couches behind us, our Simpsons and Family Guy, and Dan, I don't know what yours is, whatever. But yeah, Futurama. So it's really important to have a dedicated space. A lot of our coworkers, they've had to really adapt. They have their families at home, their husbands or wives and whatever else. And the single office they had is now being used by one of them, and the other person has had to, make the kitchen table or, the living room couch or whatever it is, but make it a dedicated space, not something that you just move all of the time. It's really, really important. I think the other thing is, for me, what's worked over the years is scheduling out your day. I try to do that the day before. So things that I schedule on my calendar are workouts. And right now I'm scheduling time with my children. So I have a block every day where I'm focusing on my workout and my kids to make sure that, they're getting their work done. But it could be other things. Once we're able to get out and do things, if more people are working from home, having those things on your calendar and scheduled forces you to do it. And it's really important to have those on your schedule and calendar, and make that a part of your day. Outside of that, having the equipment that's necessary to really have a work from home type of office, some organizations are better than others about providing that, but I think it's really important, have a second monitor, maybe a third, depending on what you like to use. In this whole new Zoom era, having a dedicated microphone, I think helps a lot for me. It's helped a lot with clarity and things like that. Before I had that, I always got a lot of comments like, hey, the microphone's kind of weird, or it's echoing or whatever else. Since I got a microphone, haven't had an issue. So like having those few things and few technology features in your home setup is really important, especially since instead of face-to-face, we're now on Zoom, right? I know Dan, he's been working from home for a while too. Adam, this is his first go at it. And, I think, he's learning and adapting as he goes. So I think, hearing from those two about some of the things they've done would be beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, I really empathize with folks that have been forced into working from home right now. Like this is a new situation for them because of, COVID-19 and everything that's going on with office shutdowns and et cetera. Like you said, I've been working from home for a long time, so I have the advantage of kind of being comfortable in the environment of prioritizing my own day, not having people looking over my shoulder, having dedicated space. If I had to make a list I would say dedicated space is very high on the list per your recommendation, and it doesn't matter what the space is. Again, I've been working from home long enough that even like a requirement of us buying this house was that I had space for an office. So it's certainly easier if you have separate space to limit distraction, if you don't have the kids running around, or whatever other distractions you have in the kitchen is a busy space. If you're at your dining room table and you have like everything all over the place, it's not as clean and focused of an environment. But having a dedicated space, whatever it is, I've gone through bouts where like I had a big leak that took out the wall in my office, and I was working at the kitchen table for a couple of months. Having that be the spot that like, okay, I'm here, I'm doing work mode now, kind of helps get your brain into flow. If you can remove distractions, remove like everything that you can, it certainly is easier to work in like a clean environment without papers and mess all around. Just reducing the things that are going to distract you from getting into like flow and work state. And there's a couple of other things that I will do to help kind of kickstart the day. Sometimes, especially when I'm balancing a lot of conflicting priorities and trying to decide like what the important things to work on are. I go through cycles of doing like morning journaling and meditation, and then not doing that. But I do find that when I'm particularly busy and have a lot of things going on, that taking and writing a page of random thoughts in the morning, or even just taking a second to collect and think in quiet, what are the important things for me to accomplish today? If I had to accomplish one thing, this is like a getting things done technique from David Allen's book. If I had to accomplish one thing today, what is that thing? He calls it eating your frog, because it sucks. Nobody would want to eat a frog. And I mean, I get maybe unless it's cooked. I hear it tastes like chicken, but eat your frog first thing, right? Like the most important thing that you need to accomplish for the day should be like the first thing that you do before you get sucked into other stuff and off track. And that really helps me feel like I'm actually accomplishing stuff on a daily basis, is getting my most important thing out of the way. The other thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the importance of maintaining your mental health and your physical health. You said exercising, but mental health is just as important. When when you're working from home, work is always there, and it's very hard to pry away and separate. I find it very easy for me to work more than normal. Maybe that's me, but I think that a good part of that is because work is very accessible. So having some clear delineation and making sure to take breaks, get up, stretch, walk around. If you're feeling particularly unfocused or can't really prioritize the next thing for you to do or work on, it's a good idea to go take a walk or get away from the computer so that you can reset, recontext, and figure out where to go.
Yeah, I think yeah, I was just going to add on to that too. A very good point, Dan, about making sure that the dedicated space is so important for being able to quote unquote leave the office, right? Like go away, get away. My work day's done. My work stays in my office in my dedicated space, and I go away and I do my family things and whatever else. It's extremely important because it is so accessible and so easy just to, hey, I'm here. Yeah, I'll take a meeting at 7 o'clock tonight. Yeah, no big deal, right? But you start doing that over and over and over, and now you're working 12, 14 plus hour days, and it starts to really drain on you emotionally, mentally, and even physically. I mean, not just the workout, but just sitting at a desk and whatever else. Like I've gotten a standing desk, which I think is amazing. I think Adam, you have one too, right? I try to at least stand 2 to 3 times a day throughout with meetings, mostly during meetings because it's a lot easier to be focused. You know, they've done studies when you're talking, standing is supposed to help you focus. So, Adam, you were saying something too about Dan's thoughts.
Yeah, the idea of making sure you take breaks is important. I agree with Dan. I think it's super easy to continue work. David, you agreed as well. But so, like David said, this is my first work from home job, and it's really interesting because our entire team is distributed, so we're all working from home. So we were all kind of at an advantage when all the COVID stuff hit because we, as a team, we've already been using these kind of tools to communicate. We're experts using Slack and video chats and stuff. But for me, you know, I faced a few different challenges that I didn't really anticipate. Onboarding was a lot tougher. Asking questions. It's when you're in an office and you're back to back in cubicles, you can pop a head over and just say, hey, what does this mean? Or where am I to go next on this? But when you're actually sending somebody a chat message, it seems a lot more intrusive. You're sending them a chat message, they're going to get an alert and they're going to have to context switch. Well, in reality, it's the same thing as asking somebody in person, and you shouldn't feel bad about needing to do that, especially in this environment. That was a little bit of a learning curve for me. I tended to try to solution before interrupting, and certainly that made onboarding a lot tougher. The other challenge that I faced was all of my hobbies involve computers in my office already that is dedicated to my work. So I faced another challenge where I sit down after my kids went to bed, do the family time, do dinner and everything, but then sit down for my hobbies. And I was sitting down and my work computer was right there, and I was, I do stuff like a conference, which I've discussed before in a Labs Weekly, and I do some community projects, and I like to code. So if I'm coding, at night, and I'm seeing alerts and stuff, I get dragged back and sucked back into work pretty easily. So one of my pieces of advice is to have a computer, your work computer, and try to avoid doing any extra coding or anything on there, and move it to a different computer. So you have to literally switch your computers at night, and because your space won't change, right? This is where I spend all my time already in my office, and this is where I spend my work day and my hobby time. So in order to switch it up, I have an entirely separate computer that I swap in and out. So I think that's another important piece of advice. Lastly, as somebody who's brand new to this, Dan and David have been doing it for a long time. So I think that they would agree that technology over the past, what David said, he'd been doing it 15 years, technology has increased to the point where, communicating is not that difficult. It's really easy, if you want to get a hold of somebody and just have a quick chat or a quick video discussion, you should do that. But coming into it, fresh, I was hesitant to do stuff like that. So, make sure that you make time to really understand, your tasks or your problems, and your challenges, and work and communicate with the team. But those are my pieces of advice, besides, create a routine, which David and Dan both mentioned. And once you have that routine, you wake up, you do your workout, you do, your lunch at this time. That makes it good too, because if people are remote and they know that, hey, Adam usually takes his lunch at this time, that's a good time to avoid, scheduling a meeting with him, kind of thing. And so that helps too, just helps you as an individual with your teammates. So.
Yeah, I think, to your point, about the technology and where it's come in the last 14, 15 years. I was thinking about it, when I went to work for IBM, I think our means of communication were either phone. So we were all required to have a business landline phone, right? And I think we used Lotus Messenger or whatever the hell it was called at the time, IBM products, but outside of that, there wasn't Zoom, right? There wasn't Slack, there was none of that. So one thing that I've really enjoyed with our work as the team and at Contrast is everyone's pretty cool about just getting on video chat, like seeing each other. I think it's really important. I've worked at places where people they had like permanent tape over their video cameras on their machines and whatever else. It's so much better being able to see someone and interact that way versus just talking, right? Like, let's pick up a phone if that's what we're going to do, right? So I think that's another thing. Working from home, you're not getting that human interaction that you may be used to. So actually seeing them, even if it's on Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever you're using, is really important.
Yeah, you definitely should not feel bad about reaching out and staying in contact with people. And in fact, you should be proactive about that. There's a certain element of out of sight, out of mind, especially if, typically you work remotely with a group of people that are together or are in an office. Fortunately, now we're in a situation where most people are experiencing the work from home dynamic. So we're all on the same playing field. But that's something I have for sure experienced in the past is, needing to be proactive about reaching out to folks, staying on top with them, and, like you suggested, jumping on a video call so that you can have some simulated face to face. It's more personal than chatting. On the flip side of that, there's definitely some company cultures where, if you're not in an office and people can see you working, they just assume that you're not doing work, which, like, earlier in my career working from home, I used to have almost like an anxiety of being obsessively watching for messages and constantly being sure to respond as fast as possible so that, to the point where I I had a hard time stepping away and then not looking at my phone constantly to make sure that it's not 20 seconds before I get back to somebody that has a question. And I just don't feel bad about that anymore, because it will destroy your psyche to just be obsessed with responding immediately. So I think it's really important to set the expectations around, what is reasonable to respond, but also being vocal about what you have worked on, what you are working on, and making sure that you're kind of an advocate for yourself so that stuff just doesn't, happen in a silo and nobody knows what you're doing.
Yeah, having
Yeah,
the stand-ups or ensuring that you're creating tickets for every one of your tasks, is a good way to make sure that you advocate for yourself.
yeah, I think that transparency is something that a lot of organizations are probably struggling with, especially those that weren't working from home before, and they didn't have a ticketing system or because they were physically there. Everyone knew what everyone was working on, just because they could talk and hear what was going on. Versus now we're at home. There's periods of time where I don't see people. How are we tracking the work? And for us, we use Jira, we use tickets. It's been great. It provides that transparency to the business. Not that they're micromanaging anything whatsoever, but it helps our own psyches. Like Dan said, like I always felt like I had to be on task all of the time and focus on, I get this alert, I need to respond right now, just to make sure it looks like I'm doing stuff right. So it's a lot of that, but a lot of like, hey, these are my tasks, and I'm working on them, and we're all focusing on the right things. So it's just something that when I first started working from home, I was like, it's not for everyone, right? And as I've grown in my career and the longer that I've been working from home, I think at some point in your career, it is for everyone. I mean, people have different ways of doing things, and we're adapting to that, whether it be I do my best work from 8 p.m. till 2 a.m., right? Or so and so works for a couple hours, takes a couple hours off, and so on and so forth, right? And I think what we've seen and what I've seen is people do their best work when they have that sort of flexibility versus coming to the office from 9 to 5 and be here every single day, right? And I think people who, start in that office setting like I did and go into the work from home, and now I have that flexibility and I know I can focus versus sit around in water cooler with people or whatever else that you do in an office, which I honestly can't even remember. I really think that, we're going to see more of it. More people will stay working from home. More people will realize that they don't need this fancy big office building anymore, because they can be as productive and save, frankly, quite a bit of money.
One of the things for the people who out there who are fresh, COVID, working from home type people, one of the things that our team does, that I'd like to impart as advice is, we do always turn on our videos, like David mentioned. We do, do virtual happy hours, where, sometimes Friday afternoon, we just all get together to talk. Or we have like group meetings where we all hack a product, or something like that. So, if you're new at this, like you'll adapt, like David mentioned, but like if you're struggling with adapting, like make sure to incorporate some of those in-office environments into your now virtual environment. And the ways to do that are, virtual meetings, always turn on video, maybe set up some sort of virtual happy hour with your coworkers.
Yeah, or even like, hey, let's have lunch today at noon, right? Like let's eat lunch together, and just like we be walking down the street and going to the bistro next door or whatever. So it's trying to simulate that in-office feel. We're not physically next to each other, but we can see each other and we can still have that feel, right?
Yeah, maintaining the social aspect is really important with coworkers and also with personal friends, because it can be, hard even when we are allowed to go out to public places, to force yourself to leave the house, because work is always there and most of the things that you need are there, save for grocery shopping and stuff like that. I also think it's important to recognize that, it, for the sake of your careers and advancement, availability, all that stuff, like it's really hard to set strict work boundaries. Like there's always going to be circumstances where you have to go the extra mile or be available outside of the time you expect to be, or put in extra effort and hours. And the important thing is just finding the right balance there and taking the time back when you can, and that's just management of tech burnout in general. It's not just a work from home thing.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been fun today. If anyone, frankly, has any questions about work from home or security or whatever, feel free to reach out to us. Our Twitter handles are in the post, and we'll see you next week.
The 0-day heap will spray, clear the way. If the log file touch, get your hard line cut. Number 2, never let them know your next move. Don't you know bad boys moving silence and pirate taken from your wireless? I done flashed mad chips with these hacks just to patch these bits. Number 3, never trust nobody. IRC is bad.